Bam.
Hey, this is Adam Dobbins, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
Yeah, man, we're doing it. It's funny. We get to talk. We're all across the country from each other. Possibly we've been in the same room, but probably not. But a small enough world that it's easily true that we've, taken the same briefs or whatever. But it's funny. The modern combat warriors, I don't know, I guess we've learned a lot of lessons from the previous eras, right? They've kind of got us straight on certain things. And I wonder, like, we're better at telling our stories. We're better at being entrepreneurs now. All these things. Are we better at being post-war, do you think?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say. Do we have data now like we did then? Everything's a lot different. Everything was a whole lot different back then as far as special forces go and the way we operate, especially, as you said, conventionally. Things were the pace and just audacity of the way that things have gone, according to decades ago, is so different. There's really a lot of different relations. That was a lot more political, and then it became now religious, more religious based. It's totally different.
Yeah. When I talk to old time guys, and this is throughout my career and everything, you talk to the World War II guys, like, I don't know how you guys fight in this modern war. Like, they're just baffled by it, and it's too hard. They would never want to take part in it, right? But we look back at, and I'm just saying World War II, but Korea, Vietnam, these are not gentle fights. I mean, if you're someone who leaves the wire every day and goes on patrols, that's life-wrecking stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even now, I talked to a couple of my team guy buddies within the last few days, and they're helping with the Hurricane Helene, and they've got talks set up all over the place, all over North Carolina. Some of these families that were hit are these are mountain towns. These people are rural. They're older communities. This is a heavy hit for them. So. But it's got to be facilitated correctly, because people are also taking advantage of people in those situations.
We're also taking and breaking whoever does work, SEALs, Green Berets, spies like me, but anybody, MPs, these guys are like, hey, 13 years, it's too much. Can't do anymore, right? We've broken a lot of people in the last 25 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's take or break. You'll take the job you keep taking. It's very simple. I was working with a great company before I opened Grow Depot, doing contracting work, and it was really good job, really good company. I miss working for them, and I miss the couple. We still stay in contact, and it's great. Is some of the things you take from those situations and put them into others, especially in this atmosphere. But I'm working with civilians now, and it was a whole, just kind of how I was talking about the shift in the war and the way we fight, working as a civilian and definitely leading civilians as an owner of a store with a lot of employees. Oh my goodness. It was very eye-opening to my EQ and everything, humbling.
Yeah. You can't just throw someone's gear in the hallway and change the combination on the team room.
Right. Well, I mean, as far as like special forces guys, do you own a sushi knife?
Me? No.
Okay. Well, a sushi knife has only the bevel on one side. It's flat on the other.
Okay.
So in the special forces, we're taught to sharpen that other fucking side. Both sides need to be sharp. So, but in the civilian world, a lot of them just don't have the fundamental education and or integrity that was instilled by their family and or church or foundation to be even able to hone that. So, just knowing that you can only use the one sharp side, whatever that angle may be, it's just a lot different to put yourself in that perspective because of working with the top tier gentlemen and people of the United States, and then you start working with regular people, it was kind of a witnessing moment for myself, of sort. And then I had to really, I don't know if it was ego or some kind of step back. It was very humbling. I mean, I've had, when we were building out Grow Depot, I couldn't find a contractor to save my life. Everybody would come in, I'd have the scope of work on a whiteboard, like, you know, everything was like walking into very organized, and I was like, oh cool, we got to get workers tomorrow, and no show. You know, I mean, it's like, oh shit. And then I'm like, all right, well, here's days, and we got, you know, we're paying rent, we got to get the door open so we can start selling shit and paying for this, all these lights and all this shit, you know.
Yeah. And there's just these differences, right? That when you work on our end of things, where everything's forward and doing things and a common goal, even if we disagree on the common goal, it's the same hunk of wood we're all pushing or pulling on, right? Like, it's like our approach might be different and everything else. But when you get a civilian, if you say, hey, as soon as possible, can you get this done? We hear, get it done right fucking now. Why aren't you done yet? They hear, oh, all right, I'll get to it. You know, and it's just like just a totally different mentality. Neither one's better, but we hear ASAP, and we hear as soon as fucking possible, like, get off your ass right now and get going, right? That's what we hear. And they hear, like, when you can get to it, when you got time. Go ahead. Yeah.
And here locally, I live in Virginia Beach. So here locally, there's a lot of companies that are owned by SEALs and or special forces guys, or run, you know, you got iFly down at Virginia Beach. There's Bob Pizziani and, you know, and Jason Laverius, and you got Bold Mariner Brewing Company. That's Mike Stacks down there, and, you know, VHP with Ollie. And I see their teams and the way they're running stuff, and, you know, Mitch with Massive. And, you know, I would not get in the ring with that guy like he did for social media. Jesus, like, he took a pounding like a champ on that video, man. But, you know, you take all these and construct it like, I guess you could say consultants, you know, and put your own things together. And it's great to have, I'm very fortunate to be in the area where I'm at and have the ties that I have. I mean, the brotherhood's helped out a lot for sure. And being in ties to be able to have opportunities like this, to be on your show, is great, and talk about things and just kind of wing it as we go, you know?
Yeah. Winging it for sure is a thing. Another interesting thing about the civilian world is you hire someone to work at your shop. Even if they're a good employee, there's plenty of folks who are like, this is where I work. You get 4.5 hours from me, and then you don't ask me for anything else, because I'm not here for that. I'm here to do my job. And that's a good employee, you know, like the bare minimum dude is like, okay, thank God this guy's reliable. He shows up, does his job. If I ask him for anything else, he's going to tell me no. He's not going to cover shifts. He's not going to do anything, but that person's going to be there for you. And then you got folks where you're not even third or fourth or fifth on their priority list, because can honestly, they can swap your job out with 100 different jobs. They can drive their own damn car around, right? And so they don't necessarily need you. And we're definitely not used to that.
It's definitely environment, and some kind of vibe or something, you know, the environment. You definitely want them to be happy and keep them engaged. As soon as, you know, as soon as that complacency comes in for anything, that's any job. You know, people, we're human, we get bored.
Yeah. How do you know, in the military, we always get mentored. Always like, you need to write a paper, you need to go to school, you need to go to this other small tactical school, you need to do this. You're always like, how do I get, you know, farther ahead? How do I compete with my peers? Again, that's not the civilian world. You know, you can just say like, hey, I've got 100 other interests outside of this shop, and nothing to do with what happens here. And so you've got my time. And so how do you try to mentor somebody when the world that you're in is a totally different world?
Oh man, it's interesting you say that. And I have someone that I was talking to that told me that I needed a mentee per se. Man, I got a ton of employees, and sometimes I guess I have been on that path to help people, especially in the civilian world. And then it turns into something else, you know, and then you get in that realm of grace versus forgiveness, I guess you could say, because, you know, they're your employee. You've given them a little bit more grace and or forgiveness, which those two things are two totally different things. And they can lead down a slippery slope with employees that you're menteeing, you know? So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think it does. It gets after the, you know, there is a difference. You don't have someone saying, all right, Adam, hey, I want you to work on these kind of things to improve your career. And that person outranks you. They're further down the road than you. And so you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Plus, you want to have favor with that person. You don't want to let them down. And so that always happens, even when you're deployed, right? Like you got some colonel or some commander saying, hey, listen, here's what I need you to do because you got to get to the next step.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, shit. And yeah, it's just different in the civilian world because you might say that, and then all of a sudden you become potentially less of a mentor, more of a friend, less of a boss, and more of a, you know, a person who's like condescending, and it's not the expected relationship, I think, in a lot of cases. And then, like any commander's dilemma, if you find someone that really is taking to your instruction and your mentating, or whatever you want to call it, you can fuck up the rest of your company. Like, oh, Adam loves Pete. That's why he's always talking to him. And it's like, no, Pete's just willing to drink the water. And I got plenty of water and I need more guys like Pete around, you know? So that's always a thing that we're trying to deal with.
And I mean, it's like there are those that want to be your friend. And as an executive leader, you need to make sure that you're their leader and boss and you're leading them. They need leaders. They have enough friends. They need a strong leader to kind of guide and direct them. And the same thing with, like I said, that executive presence and working with civilians. And now that I've had, holy crap, since I opened this business, it really put a toll on me. And I was already having mental issues, stresses that really at that point, I think my emotional capacity was probably like thirsty, horny, hungry, angry, which was a big one, which like that one kind of always was kind of your polarized north was going to the anger and maybe a few other ones, tired. You know, and so within the years, you know, I lost my friend Mike Day. That was last March of last year, 2023. And I helped with that whole estate and everything. Man, it got pretty gnarly. You know, I didn't realize what was going to come. And this old SEAL warrant officer found out that I was helping, and he warned me. And being the younger, naive, enlisted guy that I normally am, I charged right ahead. And wow, that snake bit me hard. You know,
how so?
Just there was a lot of sides to where I felt like I was helping, and you know, it was just, I understand now. I mean, that's just the way the family was handling it, and or the dynamics of the family, I guess you could say, where I guess I could be seen as a little harsh and or I don't know, what do you call that, monotone, or what's the but that's just at the time, that's the way that I had to compartmentalize all that. And that, along with already having some mental stresses, just holy shit. Like I had started this business. I had started less of my deployment. So I kind of got away from, you know, being deployed, being overseas. And once I got into my routine, it was very reconstituting for myself, I guess you could say, because you got into a routine, you were able to work out and really isolate from the regular society. And I mean, I would take the midnight to 4 a.m. shift on purpose just because I could be outside and look at the stars and nobody bother you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
then you get further along and you start noticing those things happen, and then something else kind of like a tender, which, having a good friend of yours commit suicide and being in the community that we're in, it really was upsetting because Ramirez was before that, and then Mike, and there's just this succession of, and it's a small community where it gets around really quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it just leading up to that, and I went, I think it was somewhere around August of last year. I went with Tara Mahoney and her equine immersion program up in New Hampshire, and we did some horseback riding with a bunch of other SEAL guys that were from the same class. They were a lot older than I was, and they kind of took me under their wing. One of the guys came into my store actually and could just tell that I wasn't doing very well. Really nice fucking guy, man.
Yeah.
He was like, "What are you doing?" So and so, and I was like, and he was like, "You want to go do this horse program?" And I'm like, "Sure." I'm from down south. I grew up riding horses. And I'm like, "Can my dog go?" As long as my dog can go, I usually will go somewhere.
Yeah.
We're a 2-part deal.
Yeah, package. Yeah, you said a lot of stuff there. Be a part of, in our community that we're in. I'm not in the SEAL community, but we're both in the combat warrior guys, and we're both have a lot of time going outside the wire. And there's a different level of stress that you get from that. Not that other folks don't get stressed, but our pace of work, the cost of that work, it's just a lot. And so when you see someone struggling, we're trying to help, and you can help, but also you have to have that grace to allow that person to stumble if that's what they need to do, even to die, because a lot of these things don't belong to us. And it might feel good for me to tell you what you need to do to put yourself together. And boy, we love to say, you need to get in the gym and you need to be hard on yourself and be tougher, because if you don't do that, you're not doing enough. But it turns out the real world's more subtle than that, and knowing when to back off and create space for somebody and doing what you need to do to protect yourself, but also not doing things only for yourself. And that is, man, I have found that is a very hard lesson that I still haven't learned, because I'm desperate to help somebody, but a lot of that work doesn't belong to me,
Yeah, I'm just making some notes and stuff you said to come back to it. I mean, you know how you were saying you need to work out, you need to do all that. I can't believe I don't have one of Mike's books here, but in Mike Day's book, Perfectly Wounded, there's a chapter there that is called The Enemy Within. And he really does grasp. It really does. Robert Vera, the author, he really helped grasp the mentality of the community of assholes, I guess you could say, that is in our head. Especially the special forces guys were held to such a hard, regiment. And like you said, the stress over time, I mean, shit, all we're doing is just dopamine and cortisol. We're just geared to work like just, I mean, it's not healthy. It's kind of like this painting is all dopamines. So it's kind of like a joke, because of my mentality is just like, it might not be one of these drugs on this picture or coffee, caffeine. I'm drinking caffeine right now, but it's something that is always, but that's kind of where I'm learning over time is getting older, doing a lot of work, inner work now that, in the teams and special forces, it's team and mission. There's not a whole lot of room for self. So as we're getting further down the line, we're seeing how that's obviously not working for the community. Yeah, but then how do you teach a bunch of warriors to, you should take better care of yourself, buddy? No, you're going out there to fuck some shit up. Get the job done. Get your asses back here and get the mission done and get it done quick and safely,
Yeah. No, that's so true. It's like all right, we're going to sit down and we're going to do our self-care right now. All right, now get back to mission. And you're like, we didn't even do the self-care part. Like, yeah, we did. Checked it off the block. I got your name on the roll call.
like
Good
some
talk,
of
self-care.
like some of the guys self-care at that level, revolves around a little bit of, weighted shake weighting, but no material in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
But I mean, that's
Yeah,
the mindset, I mean, it's just go, go, go. And
yeah,
we're surrounded by this inborn, I wouldn't call it ego, but it's just something that's trained into us. And it's hard to get out of that. It's worthwhile for you in the military, but here we are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, until we possibly figure out that mindset no longer serves us.
yeah,
It served us in the military to help us get promoted, helped
yep,
us get like our spidey senses, kept us alive, did a lot of stuff for us. But I mean, it's almost like turns into asshole form or something, and then just doesn't serve you after a while.
yeah. You talked earlier about dopamine and all of that. It is absolutely true. And then we learn to operate in that different state of mind. And so normal is now abnormal to us. I mean, my cortisol pipeline must be, just gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
And so my body's like, hey, there's stress. Let's pump some cortisol into this kid. And so anger becomes a thing. And I'm not an angry guy. I'm a happy guy. But I'll sit down and all of a sudden something in my physical makeup or some trigger will happen externally. And I'm like, why am I seething with anger right now? There's no reason for it at all. I'm not mad at the person sitting next to me, but I am just like in a rage or dark and just terrifying. And I don't know that that's reliably fixable in people. You can throw me on a horse, you can throw me out in the ocean, you can do all the things. When I sit down and those combination of things happen, my body is just going to continue to do. Like I'm fine, but I have suicidal ideation every day. And the reason why I say this out loud is that so people understand you can have a normal life and still have these wounds that just don't go away. Like when, and I appreciate that this is true for some people, but not true for me. When people are like, it's post-traumatic growth. You just got to grow. And I'm like, well, mine's a disorder and I have not been able to order it. And it's not from a lack of trying. I continue to try, continue to work on it. And it's more ordered than before, but every day. And I'm like, this is earlier today. I was like, I'd be better off dead, and had a long time where I just had to be with that. I know how to manage it today, but that's a reality for guys like us. Some of us just, you hurt your ankle enough that you just have a bit of a limp. Your back just gets hurt and it doesn't ever get back up to 100%. It stays at 75 and we deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, there's that compartmentalization and the over trauma that we'll deal with until it just comes to there. Everybody's going to have that surfacing. So, I mean, I didn't even realize until I went to a program in Mexico, I didn't even realize how much built up trauma I had. And still more of it's coming up now. That was in December when I did that. Still more of it's coming up now. I did some EMDR therapy. I don't know if you know what that is. They can use eye stimulation or fingers, or you can also use paddles, and it'll vibrate from hand to hand, and it bilaterally stimulates your brain. And past regressions and stuff come up, and holy crap, I've had some interesting. It's kind of like a trip. Like if you've done psychedelics, it's very vivid for me. And I had all these accidents I had been in. Some of them, a lot of bicycle accidents. I like to bicycle, and I've had a lot of bicycle accidents. I've hit my head a lot and been knocked out a ton of times. And when I was in Mexico, one of the other special forces guys that was in the program was in there while they were kind of pre-interviewing us all together, and he was like, holy shit, dude, and then you're like, what, that's not normal?
Yeah.
Being knocked out this many times and this much, because I'm fused from L4 to S1. I had a really major parachute accident, which ended up getting me out of the military. Yeah, working through that. I mean, shoot, we had that super moon the other day, that hunter's moon, super full moon. And it took me a couple of days to figure out what was happening, but I was so sore, my knees, my back, and it had something to do with must have been the barometric pressure and or the tides and the waters with the moon. I mean, I couldn't explain anything else. Like, I mean, it felt like I blew my other knee out. I was like, what the fuck? We have, that was earlier this week. We had our 3rd year anniversary party yesterday. And
congrats.
Thanks. I was more worried that I wasn't going to be able to walk around and help my wife, because my wife's doing such an amazing job running the store. And I feel like I do a lot of the behind scenes, and I'm definitely not as great with customer service as she is. She's amazing with that. And I'm trying to plug in where I can, and here I am, like, can barely even function. I'm like, what the hell did I do, man? Like, I went to hot yoga. I was like, I didn't do anything crazy, like wreck my bike like I do on occasion, and really F myself up, Yeah.
So
it's getting old.
Well, there you go. Right. Would you trade it? Would you go back and pick a different path if it got you to the same level of success now in terms of like professionally?
Oh man. It would be nice to have some more financial freedom, because of, where I'm in now. I got, I guess my eggs are all in one basket with this business, but it's, it's a very interesting industry. I thought people would be, I have a friend that owns a local brewery, and they collaborate between breweries, and they'll make, some beers together or something. And there's my naivety is thinking that, my industry, which is more cannabis related, it is a grow store, but the majority of our customers are because the legality of having 4 plants per household.
Okay.
So, Virginia has over 700,000 veterans. The way that marijuana and cannabis are scheduled as it's BS. It was rescheduled, not too long ago, but in that nature is a lot of Americans, especially Virginians and veterans, have CCPs and they got cans and suppressors, and then you got ATF, and so they would rather, instead of getting a medical marijuana license, just grow it themselves. Because quite honestly, the way that the medical marijuana is regulated right now, it's you can definitely, a home grower could knock the socks off of anything they're buying at these dispensaries, and it's a lot more considered medical grade, in my opinion, because it's got full terpenes and or other cannabinoids that are actually healing, that do things, more, anti-anxiety, inflammation, a lot of other properties than just the THC, which is more like the airplane that gets you up and down, but the other ones are the drivers of the medicine,
Right. And so are you saying that the brewery community is more supportive? Is the community more supportive of the brewery community, or
just
are you saying that
in themselves, in and of themselves, whereas the cannabis community is, you better be prepared to take the knife out of your back after a conversation. Because it's an old, just because it became legal in 2021 in Virginia doesn't mean that, one, all the people from the old black market or traditional market, whatever you call it, have all of a sudden become legit, nor their business practices. And man, what is that book? Traction. I forget the guy's name that wrote that book, Traction, but he has a very easy acronym to kind of describe people as, visionaries versus integrators.
Yeah.
So like most visionaries are not integrators, nor do they have the GWCs, like get it with it, or the capabilities. It makes it very simple to break it down. And that was a really good, I think it was Gino Willis or something. I forget which book that was, but I know it was called Traction. Anywho, it was a good book for me to read at the beginning of business to kind of think about that, because as we were opening, 2021 was when they made it legal under Democratic seats and a different governor in Virginia. A lot of other people had ideas, as did I, to open a store that was more directed to, hydroponics and cannabis growers. However, my model was way different than the others. Mine basically was tenfold of what everyone else was. For instance, like most of the stores here are small retail stores, maybe 1,800 square feet to 2,000 square feet, whereas I have about 8,000 square feet. In true military form, I have a Connex box in the back and a nice little vending zone, and just trying to, like, now, quite honestly, it's funny that we were talking about mentees earlier. I need a freaking mentor. This space, and knowing that, I mean, it's been so humbling. I've had so many humbling experiences. I truly undervalue myself, which is sometimes a gift and a curse, because people that get into conversations with me treat me a certain way until we start talking, and or relevantly how much I give into the conversation, and my energy. So it's just, been really interesting ride. Yesterday we had our anniversary party, like I was saying, and what a great turnout. And man, I'm like punch drunk from it still. And then as military person, I was telling my wife last night, we went out with some of the reps that came in town, is like, I was trying to do an AAR like a normal military guy. And I'm like, where could we have fixed things? What could have been better? There was a lot of that stuff, but man, overall, Jesus, like we were really lucky. The weather was amazing. Virginia Beach, the weather's amazing today. So, and it was yesterday. So we just had perfect mesh of luck yesterday. It was nice. You did that, as we're growing, and we really was good team bonding, I think, to do like that. And they could see what we're doing. Because 3 years ago when we opened, they had the first CannaCon here, because Virginia became legal, and CannaCon is more of a cannabis convention. So it's a lot of vendors. So like you go to SHOT Show in Vegas, they have MJ BizCon there, and they also have like CannaCon, but it's the same as like you would expect. SHOT Show is all about guns and hunting and stuff, and it's fucking huge, and done that. But the MJ BizCon is exact for growers, and a lot of soil hydroponics, all that. We had one here, and man, yesterday we had all those reps come in. We had the parking lot closed off, so it was very humbling. Like 3 years later, we become the convention center. Virginia Beach Convention Center hosted this CannaCon, and here we are with all these reps. And basically, it's like we are not only the place to go when you need stuff to grow, but we're the place, we're the hub now. And like we don't just grow, or I haven't just grown plants. It's helped me grow in all, mentally and physically. Oh man, it's really like kind of put the thumb on me at times, but I guess it's made me stronger. Definitely smarter. You don't learn any of this in college.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's so true. My cousin runs a dispensary and a grow in Montana. and they are always fighting with themselves internally. Montana is on how legal it's going to be, what the process is. And I know I've had him on the show. And one of the things he said was that, he gets a lot of these advice answers from the government, and they're like, you got to go left, required by law. And then the next guy's like, oh, yeah, left is illegal. Can't do left. You got to do right. And so he ends up stuck in the middle a lot of times. And that's got to be frustrating. By the way, you were cracking me up with the AAR thing because I can just picture you're like, hey, everybody, gather around, take a knee, everybody, take a knee, put your hand on someone's shoulder. All right, here we go. It cracks me up when I think about those times. So going back to what I was talking about, so my cousin's talking about, the battles, and then, the state will inch forward and then it'll go 2 inches back and then it'll get inch forward and so you're always having to adjust your business to that. So this is all in flight, right? So not only do you have to run a business, you have to modify yourself to whatever we're going to have an election in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Shit's going to change fast,
What
and I don't know, are you guys trending towards legality or where you go? How do you think about all this?
So really, Virginia has Altria and Philip Morris, the big Virginia tobacco.
Sure.
So, and now the seats have changed since the legality inception, as well as the scheduling, which may make it a little more up to study it so they can actually see the scientific purposes of it instead of keeping it scheduled where it was and not allowing, other countries. We are way behind in our research and, in plant medicine and cannabis and all these things. Look what happened to the FDA just, turned down the use of MDMA for veterans, where they see the benefit, but still the FDA was the final one to gladiator. Nope, like kill it. So and Rick Doblin and those people of MAPS are still grinding away. It didn't really seem to phase them. They had already pre-planned this, as are groups like CPAIR with the cannabis and everything, with the scheduling, and they're doing really good work and keeping up with these legalities because, like you said, there's this way. Well, for me at my store, state and federal.
Yeah, okay, right.
Let's get into that. So every state has banks. If you go into the bank, it says FDIC. That's federal. That's a federal bank.
Yeah.
Okay, you got your merchant where you credit card merchants, so other grow stores in the area are selling clones, which are just propagated cuttings from select varietal or phenotype plants, which in our industry would be cannabis. And according to Virginia Department of Agriculture and or the legality with the scheduling, you can't do that. So we don't sell seeds or clones right now, but other stores are doing it. But since we're so big, it would create just a shitstorm for me. And then we want to be able to use our credit card processor. We do, as most retail stores do. Not many people use cash anymore. Even in our industry with cannabis, I thought it would be way more cash because of the old traditional market, but people are using cards 70 to 80% of the time. And if I can't ring people out on a credit card processor, I'm not going to be able to pay my employees, which is my team, and or the rent and my utilities and CapEx, much less
that's a big thing.
Much less buy cost of goods to have more stuff on the shelf to resell to my customers.
And here in California, and I can be wrong because I don't go to the weed store very often, but if I was to go there, I believe you have to do all your transactions in cash because that's how it is in California, right? Like we're not afraid of the federal government right now. They're on our side. We'll see what happens later.
Or some of the dispensaries have these places you can use credit card or processor, and it goes to some other it goes to some other thing. You have to round up. So it looks like you're pulling money out. I forget how that works. You know, I've seen it like, cause I was out in Colorado a couple months ago and bought some gummies and like, I was like, what the hell? And they're like, yeah, you got to round up. I'm like, well, fucking give me that too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of that. I guess you could even call it gray market because it's not really illegal, but you're having to like, we only deal in crypto. We only deal in cash. By the way, when you have cash, that's a place that gets robbed because you got weed and cash in one place. That means you got to have a legit armed force there, right? And not just like the kind like, oh, he's qualified. Like, no, I need someone who's going to make people realize that.
oh man,
Here,
once they make the interstate movement of it, okay, because really now the industry crop is not worth a whole lot. It's not worth a whole lot. It's not worth it to the black market guy to do it unless you're doing a huge volume. The price has been lowered and hammered down by all these commercial facilities that, your ROI for quality product, it's really difficult, but you have these people that do craft grows. That's where you want to get them growing craft stuff. So it's like, if you're a $2 chuck all the time and you're cool with that, going to Trader Joe's and getting the $2 chuck, nothing wrong with that. It's good at certain temperatures and better at others. But there's also Camus and Silver Oak, Cabernet and Toomey and all these great vineyards and stuff to try out there. It's the same with, with every, it goes the same.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
You got to pay for it.
You got to pay for it. So we've got a few minutes left. I don't want to pick all the topics here. What do you want to chat about? What's up with you? What questions do you want to ask me?
How about, all right, we went over some stress. Like, how about like the trauma? And like you were saying something about the other day or something, but is having all these realizations, like we function, like how we realize we know that we function on that cortisol, and then we just plug back into it and keep plugging into it. Well, the half-life on those, meaning how long it lasts. So like if you get pissed off on the way into work by some guy that cuts you off, how long are you charged up after that? And then do you take another shot of cortisol with something else? Like when you get to the work and you're like, that motherfucker, and you're just like, well, like, man, just working in the teams like that. And then now, and I think having a witness of yourself and knowing that you're not all right, but then being able to be vulnerable and be leaning on other people, and then having strong organizations to back you. Like, we're lucky we have the Navy SEAL Foundation. There's, vets that I'm working with, and all these other great organizations that are available to SEALs and special forces. But it's really hard to navigate for the regular military and or civilians, because now my position at work, I'm in the limelight. I have a lot of people coming to me for help, and I can't really do anything but lead them to the water, meaning have resources for them, because I can only expend so much of my energy on that and trying to find balance. I mean, like today, Jason Redmond posted this really good share on Instagram about balance, because he's got a lot of new work ventures. And, it's like my relationship with my wife, my work, and then now like this mental health thing that I've been working through, and just having this awareness and a witnessing form as I've been growing through it. It's very hard to do that balance and to work and be through it and be with it, because you have to be cool with it. And knowing that, like these guys that are committing suicide, it's just because they're suffering and they just can't work through it. They're stuck in that loophole. So sad, you know, but you can't really, like you said, you can't tell them because everyone's got their own path. So how do you figure out how to tackle this path of self when you're so widespread variety? Like, you know, one guy could do the horse program like I did, which was life-changing, and what a great group of girls and program that is. And that could be life-changing. Or one could go to one's retreat in Jamaica where psilocybin is legal and have a life-changing experience, or vets where you go, you know, there's all these things, but some things don't work for others. You know, I mean, some people drive trucks and some people don't, you know, or whatever. It's just you gotta figure out, like, you know, and that's a big thing where we're trying to figure out, you know, we're doing these post-mortem autopsies and inspections of the brain, which that's not a good word for, I'm kind of lost, but and it's telling us about a lot more about the concussions and, you know, blast things to everyone with trauma. So like with me talking earlier about the EMDR, you know, I did not do jack shit in the teens. I got hurt and I did more as a contractor. And I'm lucky to be in the community, to be honest, you know, and or alive, which is great. Which that's a whole nother story. I mean, which is funny is like Mike's book talks about the medication and how that genetics test. At one point I got really low and I got prescribed Paxil, and I thought about Mike's book a little bit and how he had said that thing about the genetics test, and fast forward 3 weeks, I thought I was fucking going crazy. Like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, and I'm trying to heal myself and doing all this thing. And Tara from that horse program just randomly called me, and like, you know, my primary physician kind of, I don't think is that great, but and then when I got through talking to her, she's like, it's got to be the medicine, order that gene test, and within 10 days I had, you know, gotten the swabs, which my insurance paid for. They mailed it to you. Swab, cheap, send it in. Within 10 days, I realized I had bougie blood and I couldn't take all that stuff. And like, man, damn near killed me, you know, like made it worse. The suicidal ideations and that committee of assholes and or enemy within, like Mike said, it just was fuck, holy shit. And to be able to work through that space and then try to work with others, you have more a sense of realization because you've been there. Because sometimes, like when a lot of this really started getting bad, I was like, how the hell does that happen? And then fast forward a year and a half or whatever, and then I'm like, oh, fuck, how did this happen to me? Here I am. And you're trying to scoop out. And like in that whole thing of self mission and team, it's really hard to ask for help. We're really hard on ourselves, and even myself, I find things that I would like to share with that I can't exactly share with my wife, and or I just don't have many people to relate to. And I know the sources and avenues that I could share, but it makes me feel weak. Honestly.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I'm either scared or I feel weak. And to have, and to have that truthfulness with yourself, it really is, it's kind of sad. And, you know, you get a little hopeless because you're like, fuck, I don't even want to help myself, or I won't let myself be helped. And think about these other circumstances. It's sad. It's scary.
Let me jump in on that fear thing, because I think for people in general, not just guys like us, but there's more there, right? So I can call you and we can talk, and that can kind of take some pressure out of my balloon. And I don't want to admit to you that I'm weak or that I'm hurt, but also I don't necessarily want to get into the mental care gym with you and expose myself to more damage.
Yeah.
Not that I don't trust you, but it's me. Like, I don't want to get hurt anymore. So if I just talk through it, even if we don't talk about it, and I'm able to get some relief, that for me is part of my fear as well too. Is I don't want to go like, like sometimes, like if you get a leg cramp, I'm an ape man. So this has got to be a thing for you. You get like a cramp in your thigh, this fist is going to blast into my thigh until that cramp goes away and changes. I just change the nature of my leg. I don't want to do that to my mental damage. It's like doing squats to failure.
Yeah.
Terrifying, and so we don't want to do these things. I think that's part of the fear, is that you have to get back into the thing where you actually are damaged, you are weak, you are looking like, I have my leg, my ankle rebuilt. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want it to touch other things for a long time because where it was, and it wasn't all the way healed yet, and it's still getting better, but it was too much input for me to handle, looking at, thinking, touching, feeling my leg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's along with the drinking, which is funny for the alcohol and the military is, when one of our boys passed on, well, let's go drink it away, and with like the feeling thing. Have you ever looked at the emotions wheel? They use it a lot in therapy for guys like us, because like we ultimately always navigate to that anger thing, like I said, which was very helpful for us in military, but now it just doesn't really function well for us. But then you look at that old emotion wheel and you're like, okay, wait, this is not really anger. This, it's fear. But then the fear leads into this, but then you're like, oh, fuck, So, but then you have to like sit with it and feel it. And like, sometimes it ain't pretty. Why am I ashamed? Why am I sad? I mean, man, my poor mom, like, for instance, I called her the other day and she asked these questions just like a poor, dear old sweet mother will do. And you answer her and you get that vibe and that tone. You're like, fuck, I let her down. Like, I'm not doing the path that she wanted or something. And then you get upset with yourself, and it's kind of like that rotation where you're in like with that community of assholes again. And you're like, where you're like trying to relate, and you just like, I mean, you can do that with a lot of instances. Like I said earlier, like I felt like earlier this week, I was letting my wife down. So, it's that back to that team guy, fucking operator mentality of where I'm always kind of comparing myself. I'm always trying to hold myself to this standard, this gold standard. And I'm like, shit, it really, like, the body keeps a score. Because now, as I'm older and spending time with my healing journey, I'm sitting with things more. I'm noticing. I mean, that's why I'm moving around right now. I can't even sit still. My body hurts so bad.
Same.
So, and I'm trying to re-navigate my VA claim. So it will help me with taxes and some income. And like I said, some financial freedom. Those are things that I would like to do. But definitely that's a hard, man, I've been using private physicians and everything. One for convenience, and the other is I had a interesting experience when I was getting out of the military and starting to navigate the VA, and I guess I answered some questions wrong, and maybe I had some suicidal ideations back then. I don't even remember, but they were trying to check me into somewhere, and I could not get away fast enough.
That's a real thing.
I didn't go back for like 20 years. And then I see all these nightmares about these veterans with I know we're all over the place now as we wrap up. I see the medicine, so it does have what we are talking about does have a lot of correlation, are they doing the gene testing? I mean, shit, TRICARE won't even pay for physicals.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
or massage,
Yeah.
there's a lot of those challenges in general for anybody who's trying to get care and trying to figure it out, and the person will pick the thing. Doctors are great, but they are not omnipotent, right? And we put a lot of faith into these guys, and it's on us to go out and say, I'm not sure if that's the answer. Let me go talk to someone else, and then really, put some rigor into our lives. That's easier said than done, though, because I know when I have to do with the VA, I've got several things on my list to go back to the VA to deal with. But I'm kind of like, we're kind of taking a time out, me and the VA right now, because they ask a lot of me to manage my own care. And after taking care of my leg for several months, and I'm just sick of doing hospital things, but I got to do this stuff. And so
Yeah.
is it
And I
on
mean,
me? Is it on them? Is it on both? Shit, I don't know.
it's controlled too. Everything in that environment of the VA is controlled in their own
Yeah.
little way by the department, and as is your local. Like here,
Yeah.
we have Centera Health. Everything with that organization with the hospitals, that's their own entity. They do everything
Yep.
a certain way, which I'm not
Yeah.
a big fan of them, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And I understand trying to run any kind of hospital or partnering with another hospital like the VA does with UC Irvine, or, look, all of that is so hard, and I appreciate that. But it is a lot to have to manage your care, take care of yourself in the
yeah,
process. Because the one thing that triggers my PTSD more than anything else is the fucking VA.
yeah.
I'm like,
And I
oh my
mean,
God.
that's like I went to Orlando for the U.S. SOCOM Care Coalition conference earlier this
Yeah.
year. And wow, was that interesting? What was shared there amongst the community, especially with this veteran suicide.
Mhm.
But also is the way that they're even navigating it. They're,
Mm.
like they're in the same position I am with my work and my job, is they're needing mentorship because it's new navigable waters that no one's been in before,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like going in a cave with no NVG and you got a shitload of ammo and something's in there. So you just keep shooting, like, I'm coming in there, it's like,
Yeah. 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 Well, listen, this has been interesting and fascinating. It's always good to meet up with a fellow warrior and have a chance to chat.
I'm sure
It's
it's
a
been
complicated life.
interesting. I keep it, I'm consistent with that for sure.
Yeah. No, you did a great job, because this is the kind of stuff that's fascinating to me. And plus, like, you're an East Coast guy, I'm a West Coast guy, and there's just enough of a difference there that it's always illuminating to talk about whatever it is that you guys are working on out there. And so I appreciate the hell out of you for coming on.
Yeah, I think
What do
that
you?
since we're
Yeah.
close to DC, I think maybe that it might be possible that since we're closer to DC on the East Coast or we have shittier weather, that we go
Mhm.
through more than you do on the West Coast. Not saying that y'all don't go through as much, but if we get colds and hots. Y'all are pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
still.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Well,
we
like
got
we're
it pretty
also
sweet.
near DC, so there's a lot more lobbying for the mental health, and the people are a little closer to the source, so where it's
Yeah.
controlled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
everything happens in DC, it's controlled.
It
That's our
sure
government.
does.
This is going to be
It
an
sure
interesting few
does.
weeks coming up, man. Jesus Christ, man.
This
Like,
is gonna be
I own a
interesting.
store. This is my first year as a business owner during an election year, and that's been something that we're kind of like, you're just flying that airplane, trying to figure out how to build a landing gear on
Mhm.
it.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, all right. I'm going to wrap this up and roll the credits. I'll be right back to say goodbye to you officially. Everybody else, I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.